It did not begin as a scream from the sky or a flash over a desert highway. It began as a quiet line of numbers inside a dim laboratory where machines hummed like distant insects in summer heat. Outside the building, the city moved in its usual rhythm. Cars drifted past late-night diners glowing with tired yellow light. Neon signs flickered above empty sidewalks where the last footsteps of the evening had already faded. Somewhere beyond the river, a freight train groaned through darkness carrying cargo no one would ever think about. Nothing in the world suggested that history might be bending inside a silent room filled with cold artificial light. Inside that room stood a single figure. Elian Varick had spent most of his life listening to things no one else could hear. Not voices. Not ghosts. Only patterns. Waves. Frequencies hiding inside noise the way memories hide inside ordinary days. He was not famous. Not the kind of scientist invited onto bright television stages or quoted in loud headlines. His work lived in long technical reports few people ever finished reading. His name rested in small quiet text near the bottom of research papers. He preferred it that way because silence made thinking easier. And thinking was the only place where truth could still grow slowly without interruption. On that night, the laboratory felt heavier than usual. The air carried a dry metallic scent from circuits that had been awake too long. A storm waited somewhere beyond the clouds, though the rain had not yet begun. Even the fluorescent lights seemed to buzz with a strange uneven rhythm like breath held too long. Elian noticed the change before the computers did. He always noticed small changes first. A shift in sound. A pause lasting 1 second too long. The faint sense that something unseen had entered the room and chosen not to leave. He stopped typing. Across the main monitor, a narrow band of static trembled softly. At first, it looked ordinary. Background noise from deep space. The endless whisper collected by satellite dishes spread across empty American plains where wind moved through tall grass and no city lights touched the horizon. Noise like that filled every night of his career. Most of it meaningless. All of it familiar. But this was different. The pattern did not drift the way natural signals drift. It held still. Too still. As if waiting for someone to notice. Elian leaned closer to the screen. His chair rolled quietly across the floor and the sound echoed through the room like a question no one wanted to ask aloud. He adjusted filter settings. Changed the frequency range. Ran the same correction routine he had used thousands of times before during long quiet nights. The line remained. Perfectly steady. Perfectly unnatural. For a long moment he said nothing. Because naming something too quickly could destroy it. And because hope was dangerous in a place built entirely on proof. The clock on the wall continued moving. Each second soft and indifferent. Each second carrying the world forward whether anyone understood what was happening or not. He checked the satellite source. A remote listening array positioned far from city interference. Built in open land where the sky stretched forever and human noise faded into dust and distance. The coordinates were correct. The equipment showed no failure. No weather disruption. No mechanical error. Which meant the signal was real. A small pulse of heat moved slowly through his chest. Not excitement exactly. Something sharper. Something older. Fear mixed with recognition. Years earlier he had promised himself one rule. If anything impossible ever appeared, he would treat it the same way he treated everything else. Slowly. Carefully. Without belief. Because belief could blind a scientist faster than darkness ever could. Still the signal remained. Then it changed. Not louder. Not brighter. Structured. A pause. Then a cluster of narrow peaks. Then silence again. Elian felt the air leave his lungs before he understood why. Patterns meant intention. And intention meant origin. Natural space noise did not organize itself into repeating mathematical spacing. Radiation bursts did not wait between pulses as if measuring time with quiet patience. Someone, or something, had shaped this. He stepped back from the monitor as though distance might restore reason. The room looked the same. Metal tables. Coiled cables. Stacks of printed data leaning in uneven towers. A half-empty cup of cold coffee forgotten beside the keyboard hours ago. Ordinary objects from an ordinary night. Yet nothing felt ordinary anymore. He thought about calling someone. Protocol required verification. Multiple observers. Independent confirmation. Careful documentation protected by layers of procedure. But another thought stopped him. What if the signal disappeared the moment he spoke? What if this fragile, impossible line of numbers vanished and left only embarrassment behind? Scientists had lost entire careers over smaller mistakes. Funding vanished quietly. Reputations collapsed without apology. Doors closed and never opened again. Silence felt safer. So he watched. Minutes passed slowly. The pattern repeated again. Identical spacing. Identical timing. Not random. Never random. His heartbeat slowly began to match the rhythm on the screen, as if his body understood something his mind refused to accept. Across the hallway, a distant door closed. Footsteps faded. The building settled deeper into night until he was certain he was the only person still awake. Elian was alone with the signal. He opened a new recording channel and saved the raw data without processing. Every detail preserved. Every fluctuation captured exactly as it arrived. If this was real, he would need proof strong enough to survive disbelief. Because disbelief would come. It always came first. Outside, a distant siren moved through sleeping streets. A lonely rising sound stretching across the city before fading into nothing. For a strange moment, the laboratory felt separated from Earth itself. Like a small island floating inside endless dark space. He wondered how many times in history a discovery had begun exactly like this. Not with celebration, but with uncertainty so deep it felt like falling through invisible air. The signal pulsed again. And this time something inside it shifted. A longer pause. Followed by 3 narrow bursts. Then another pause. Simple. Clear. Deliberate. Too deliberate. Elian whispered a single word, though no one could hear him. Impossible. Yet the data continued forming shapes mathematics recognized instantly. Prime spacing. Non-random intervals. Information hidden carefully inside silence. The universal language scientists believed any intelligent life might use when distance erased all other forms of communication. His hands trembled slightly now. A reaction he had not felt since childhood. Since the first night he looked through a cheap telescope from the roof of a small apartment, and realized the sky was not empty but vast beyond imagination. Back then wonder had been simple. Pure. Untouched by responsibility or consequence. Now wonder carried weight. Because if this signal meant what it seemed to mean, nothing about the world would remain small again. He closed his eyes for a brief second. Not to rest, but to listen. Machines hummed. Cooling fans whispered. Electric current flowed unseen through hidden metal paths. And beneath it all, the steady repeating pulse from somewhere beyond Earth. Waiting. For recognition. Or reply. Elian opened his eyes slowly. One question formed in his mind, clearer than fear and stronger than doubt. If this signal truly came from intelligence beyond the planet, why now? And why him? The monitor glowed silently in the darkness. Numbers continuing their patient rhythm as if time itself were counting down toward something no one yet understood. Elian reached toward the communication log required for unusual detections. His fingers hovered above the keyboard without touching it. One action would alert the entire research network. Government observers. Military analysts. Private contractors who watch the sky for reasons never explained to the public. People who did not ask permission before taking control. If he reported this, the discovery would no longer belong to quiet science. It would belong to power. His hand stopped moving. Because another possibility had just entered his thoughts. Quiet. Dangerous. Impossible to ignore. What if the signal was not simply being detected? What if it was being directed? Toward this exact receiver. This exact laboratory. This exact moment. Toward him. The idea felt irrational. Yet the pattern on the screen continued repeating with perfect calm, untouched by doubt or fear. Outside, the first drop of rain finally touched the city pavement. Soft. Almost gentle. Then another drop. And another. Until the storm slowly began to speak in whispers against glass and concrete. Inside the laboratory. The universe waited in silence. And the question remained. Who was really listening? The rain outside grew steadier as the minutes passed. Soft drops turning into a slow constant curtain against the windows of the laboratory. Inside nothing moved except light across the monitors and the quiet rise and fall of Elian Varick's breathing. He remained standing in front of the screen as if stepping away might break whatever fragile bridge had formed between Earth and the unknown. The signal continued its calm repeating rhythm. Pause. 3 narrow bursts. Silence. Then again. Not a mistake. Not interference. Not anything he had ever seen in years of listening to the sky. He forced himself to sit down. Slow, careful motion like someone approaching a wild animal that might vanish if startled. Training returned in small controlled pieces. Open secondary verification channel. Cross-check timestamp drift. Measure background radiation fluctuation. Confirm antenna alignment. Run deep noise subtraction. Each task familiar. Each step grounding him in routine instead of wonder. But every result led to the same quiet truth. The signal was external. Consistent. Intentional. His throat felt dry. He reached for the cold coffee beside the keyboard and stopped before drinking. The smell alone reminded him how long he had been awake. Time had begun to blur. Not because of exhaustion, but because something larger than time seemed to be unfolding inside the room. He finally opened the official incident log. The blank document glowed white, waiting for words that might change history or destroy a career. He placed his fingers on the keys, then hesitated again. A memory surfaced without warning. A lecture hall years earlier. Dim projector light. Rows of students half listening. An older researcher speaking in a tired voice. Most signals are nothing. Some signals are mistakes. A very few signals will tempt you to believe in miracles. Your job is to survive that temptation. Elian had never forgotten those words. They had protected him from embarrassment, from false excitement, from the slow erosion of credibility that ended many scientific paths. But tonight the words felt weaker than the quiet pulse on the screen, because miracles were not supposed to follow mathematical structure, and mistakes were not supposed to repeat with perfect precision. He typed a single line into the log. Unidentified narrowband transmission detected. He stopped again, reading the sentence, feeling how small it sounded compared to what his instincts were beginning to suspect. Outside, thunder rolled far away across the city, low and distant like something moving beneath the horizon. The sound made him aware of another truth. If this discovery became public, nothing would remain simple. News channels, government briefings, speculation spreading faster than facts, fear growing in places that had never looked at the sky before. He imagined crowded diners where strangers argued over meaning, highways filled with restless travel, communities searching for certainty where none existed. Human history had never handled the unknown gently. His chest tightened slightly, not fear of the signal itself, but fear of what people might do with it. The pattern shifted again. This time the pause lengthened, long enough that he wondered if the transmission had ended. Then a new sequence appeared. 5 quick pulses, evenly spaced, followed by silence deeper than before. Elian leaned forward sharply, every trace of hesitation gone for a moment. Change meant progression. Progression meant communication. His mind raced through possibilities. Mathematical greeting, calibration test, proof of intelligence, or something stranger he did not yet understand. He opened spectral analysis and overlaid both sequences. The spacing ratio formed a simple relationship. 3, then 5. Prime numbers. The oldest theoretical greeting in the search for intelligence beyond Earth. A message simple enough that any thinking civilization might recognize it. His heartbeat grew louder in his ears. Not fast, just heavy, like footsteps approaching from far away. He whispered softly, "You cannot be real." Yet the screen answered with another silent pulse of light. For the first time a different emotion appeared beneath the fear. Loneliness. Not his own. Something wider. As if the signal itself carried distance inside it. Distance measured not only in space but in waiting. How long had it traveled? Years. Centuries. Longer than human civilization. And why arrive tonight? In this quiet, forgotten lab. With only one witness. The question pressed against his thoughts until another possibility formed. What if he was not the first to see it? What if someone somewhere already knew? The idea chilled him more than the storm outside. Because knowledge hidden from the public meant intention. And intention meant power moving in silence. He quickly checked global monitoring networks. Most required clearance he did not possess. But a few public research channels still streamed raw detection summaries. Nothing unusual reported. No alerts. No discussion. Either the signal was extremely narrow. Or extremely secret. Neither answer felt safe. He leaned back slowly. Staring at the ceiling where faint reflections of the monitors trembled like distant water. For years he had imagined discovering something extraordinary. Every scientist in his field secretly carried that dream. But dreams never included this feeling. This weight. This sense that discovery might also be a doorway that could never close again. Thunder sounded closer now. Rain striking harder against glass. The world outside continued unaware. People sleeping. Driving. Laughing. Arguing over ordinary problems. All of it fragile in a way he had never noticed before. Because if intelligence existed beyond Earth, human stories would suddenly feel very small. The signal repeated both sequences again. 3. Pause. 5. Steady. Patient. Unhurried. As if certain someone would understand eventually. Elian felt something shift inside himself. A quiet decision forming beneath layers of caution. Silence was no longer protection. Silence was delay. And delay might mean losing the only chance to understand. He returned to the incident log. Hands still but no longer trembling. He typed slowly, choosing each word with care. Structured repeating transmission confirmed. Prime interval relationship observed. Origin appears extraterrestrial pending verification. He stared at the final sentence. Origin appears extraterrestrial. No scientist wrote those words lightly. Some spent entire lifetimes avoiding them. Yet there it was. Simple black text on white light. Calm as any ordinary report. He saved the document. The click of confirmation sounded louder than thunder. For a moment nothing happened. No alarms. No sudden voices. Just rain and machines and the steady pulse from the sky. History often changed quietly. Without music. Without witnesses. Only later did people realize the exact second everything became different. Elian looked once more at the signal. A strange thought rose gently in his mind. If this truly was a message, then somewhere far beyond the storm, beyond the planet, beyond the limits of human travel, something was waiting. Not attacking. Not hiding. Waiting. The idea felt almost peaceful. And that frightened him more than anything else. Because peace suggested intention. And intention suggested purpose. He did not yet know which possibility was more dangerous. Contact. Or understanding. The monitor light reflected in his eyes. Small bright points in a dark room. The signal continued counting silently through space. And for the first time since it appeared, Elian Varick realized the night was only the beginning. The night stretched forward without mercy. Minutes losing their shape. Time dissolving into the quiet rhythm of rain and distant thunder. Inside the laboratory the signal continued its patient repetition. 3 pulses. Silence. 5 pulses. Silence again. Each cycle identical. Each cycle calm. As if whatever intelligence had sent it understood something humans did not. Elian Varick remained seated but rest had become impossible. His body felt still while his thoughts moved faster than they ever had before. He read through the incident log again. Every word careful. Every sentence restrained. Yet even the most cautious language could not hide the truth forming beneath it. If verification confirmed what the data suggested, this would become the most important scientific event in human history. Not a discovery of distance or chemistry, but of presence. The realization settled slowly. Heavy but clear. Humanity might not be alone. He closed the log window for a moment. Not to ignore it. Only to breathe without seeing the words. Across the room, a secondary monitor displayed raw waveform motion. Soft glowing lines rising and falling like a heartbeat belonging to the sky itself. He watched it the way someone watches fire. Drawn in. Unable to look away. A new worry entered quietly. What if the signal stopped? The thought tightened his chest instantly. Because unanswered contact could be worse than silence. Hope interrupted without explanation often left deeper scars than never hoping at all. He checked the recording buffer. Still capturing. Still perfect. Still steady. Relief passed through him in a slow, fragile wave. Then something changed. Not in the signal. In the room. A faint vibration traveled through the floor. So slight he almost believed it was imagination. But imagination did not make metal tools tremble softly against a table. He looked toward the door. Nothing. Only the long dim hallway beyond the glass panel. Empty. Silent. Yet the vibration came again. Short. Controlled. Mechanical. An elevator. Someone else was still in the building. A simple fact. But it felt heavier than it should. Because very few people had clearance to enter this wing after midnight. His mind moved through possibilities. Security patrol. Maintenance. Another researcher working late. Or someone responding to something he had not yet reported. The elevator sound stopped. Silence returned. Thicker than before. Elian realized he was holding his breath. He forced himself to exhale slowly. You are a scientist. Not a frightened child. The words formed automatically. A habit from years of pressure. Still he could not ignore the timing. The signal appears. Minutes later. Movement in a restricted building. Coincidence existed. But tonight coincidence felt fragile. Footsteps sounded faintly in the hallway. Measured. Unhurried. Coming closer. His pulse quickened despite every effort to remain calm. He glanced at the monitor again, half expecting the signal to react. It did not. 3. Pause. 5. Unchanged. Indifferent to human footsteps. A shadow passed the narrow window in the lab door. Then stopped. No knock. No voice. Only presence. Seconds stretched painfully. Finally, a soft electronic tone sounded. Access request at the secured door. Not forced entry. Authorized. Which somehow felt more unsettling. Elian stood slowly. Every movement careful. As if sudden motion might break the fragile balance of the moment. He walked toward the door. Each step louder than it should have been. The access panel glowed steady blue. Waiting for his confirmation. Protocol required visual identification first. He leaned slightly toward the glass. A figure stood outside. Tall. Still. Face partly hidden by hallway shadow. Not security. Wrong posture. Too calm. Recognition came a second later. Tarev Solon. Administrative liaison to the research network. A person who rarely visited in person. Preferring messages. Reports. Distance. Seeing him here at this hour meant only one thing. Something had already moved beyond normal channels. Elian opened the door. The hallway air felt colder immediately. Tarev stepped inside without speaking. His eyes moved once across the room, landing on the main monitor. Holding there. He already knew where to look. That single detail erased any remaining illusion of coincidence. For a long moment neither man spoke. Rain whispered against the windows. Machines hummed. The signal continued counting through space. Finally Tarev's voice came quiet and controlled. You detected it. Not a question. Elian felt the last piece of uncertainty fall away. Yes. The word sounded smaller than the truth behind it. Tarev nodded once. No surprise. Only confirmation. How long? 42 minutes. Again that small nod. As if matching a timeline already known. Cold understanding spread through Elian's thoughts. You were monitoring this before tonight. Tarev did not answer immediately. Silence stretching just long enough to become an answer itself. Then he spoke. We monitor many things. Careful words. Empty words. Elian felt frustration rise. Sharp but contained. This is not many things. For the first time Tarev looked directly at him. Expression unreadable. No. It is not. The admission changed the air in the room. Truth entering quietly but permanently. Thunder sounded close now. Storm nearly overhead. Elian asked the question forming since the footsteps began. Who else knows? A pause. Then. Enough. Not everyone. Not yet. Each sentence precise. Measured. Like someone walking across thin ice. Elian turned slightly toward the monitor again. The signal repeated. Unconcerned with secrecy. Unaware of fear. Or perhaps fully aware. Another thought surfaced. One he had tried to ignore. Has anyone responded? Tarev's stillness deepened. Almost imperceptible. But real. No. Relief and disappointment arrived together. A complicated emotion with no clear name. Good. The word escaped before he could stop it. Tarev noticed. You believe silence is safer. I believe caution is necessary. A faint breath from Tarev. Not quite disagreement. Not agreement either. The difference between them suddenly clear. One man searching for truth. The other managing consequences. The signal shifted again. Both turned instantly toward the screen. A new sequence forming. Longer. More complex. 7 pulses. Perfect spacing. Prime continuing upward. 3. 5. 7. Mathematics unfolding like a door slowly opening. Elian felt or pushed past fear. It is building. Yes. Tarev's voice quieter now. Almost human. The room seemed smaller. As if the universe outside pressed closer with every new number. Elian understood something in that moment. Clear and unavoidable. This was no accident. No random broadcast drifting through empty space. This was deliberate escalation. Designed to be understood step by step. Which meant patience. Intelligence. Purpose. And if purpose existed, then intention followed. He whispered softly. What do they want? No answer came. Not from Tarev. Not from the sky. Only the steady rain. And the silent climb of prime numbers through darkness. For the first time since the signal appeared, Elian felt the true weight of the future approaching. Not sudden. Not violent. Inevitable. Like sunrise you cannot stop. The monitor glow reflected in both their eyes. 2 human witnesses standing at the edge of something vast. And somewhere beyond the storm. Beyond distance. Beyond imagination. Something continued to count. Waiting for the moment counting would no longer be enough. The counting did not stop. 3. 5. 7. Each new prime number rising out of silence like footsteps climbing an invisible staircase through space. Rain pressed harder against the laboratory windows now. Wind bending against the glass with a low restless sound that seemed almost alive. Inside the room the air felt tighter. Not because of fear alone, but because something undeniable was unfolding second by second. Elian Varric stood motionless beside the console. Every sense focused forward. As if his entire life had narrowed into this single fragile moment. Tarev Solon remained near the door. Hands folded. Watching not only the screen but Elian himself. Measuring reactions. Measuring risk. The next sequence appeared. 11 pulses. Perfect spacing. Perfect patience. No natural force produced patience like this. Only intention. Only mind. Elian felt a quiet tremor move through him. Not visible. But deep. The kind that comes when certainty replaces doubt. This is communication. He did not mean to say it aloud. Yet the words settled into the room and stayed there. Tarev did not argue. Because argument required uncertainty. And uncertainty was fading quickly. Another realization followed close behind. If this was communication, then the next step would matter more than the first. Because first contact was not the signal. First contact would be the response. The thought changed everything. Elian turned slowly. You said no one has answered. Correct. The calm reply carried weight. Not relief. Not pride. Only control. Why? A small pause. Then, because we do not answer questions we do not understand. Elian felt frustration spark again. They are using mathematics. The one language we know is universal. Yes. Then silence is also a message. That sentence lingered between them. Sharp and impossible to ignore. Tarev's gaze shifted back to the monitor. Perhaps. But a wrong answer could be worse than silence. The truth inside that statement felt cold. Government logic. Strategic caution. Fear hidden inside patience. Elian looked again at the growing sequence of primes. 13 began to form. Steady. Unhurried. As if the sender believed time itself belonged to them. A new emotion rose quietly in Elian's chest. Not fear. Not awe. Responsibility. Because whoever sent this had chosen to speak. And silence in return might mean something far beyond caution. It might mean rejection. He imagined distance beyond imagination. A civilization waiting across years of empty darkness. Sending the simplest greeting possible. Hoping someone somewhere would notice. And finding only quiet. The loneliness of that possibility felt unbearable. We cannot ignore this. His voice was softer now. But stronger. Tarev studied him carefully. History shows restraint protects survival. History has never faced this. Thunder cracked directly overhead. The sound shaking metal shelves. Lights flickering once before steadying again. For a brief second the laboratory felt suspended outside the world. A thin space between past and future. When the light stabilized, the signal had changed again. 17 pulses. The pattern accelerating. Not in speed, but in meaning. Steps climbing higher. Elian moved closer to the console. Almost without choosing to. If they continue primes, they are waiting for recognition. Or testing intelligence. Yes. Another silence. Then Elian asked the question that had been forming since the elevator sound. How long have you known this was possible? Tarev's expression did not shift. But something behind his eyes grew distant. Long enough to prepare for it. Not long enough to understand it. Which meant this moment was larger than secrecy. Larger than planning. Even those who watched the sky for decades had never stood here before. The realization steadied Elian unexpectedly. Because uncertainty was now shared. 19 pulses appeared. Rain softened slightly outside. Storm beginning to pass. Leaving only steady dripping from the roof edges. Time felt strange again. Stretching and folding around the glowing numbers. Elian spoke quietly. If we answer, we change history. Yes. If we do not, history still changes. Another quiet nod. Somewhere in the building a distant door closed. A reminder the ordinary world still existed. Even if it no longer felt important. 23 pulses. The highest yet. Elian's mind moved quickly through theory. Signal structure. Possible reply formats. Risk of revealing location. Risk of silence misinterpreted. Every path carried consequence. But one truth stood above the rest. Contact once begun could not be undone. He felt suddenly aware of every human life beyond these walls. People in apartments. In hospitals. Driving night highways. Dreaming ordinary dreams. None of them knew the universe might be speaking. And somehow the decision of whether to answer rested inside this quiet room. The weight of that felt almost impossible to hold. Tarev finally stepped closer to the console. Close enough that both men stood within the same pale monitor glow. If a response were sent, it would not come from here. Of course. But confirmation would begin here. Yes. The admission sounded like permission. Or warning. Perhaps both. 29 pulses began. The climb continuing. steady as breathing. Elian realized something new. The sender was not rushing. No demand. No threat. Only patience. As if certain intelligence would eventually choose connection. That quiet confidence felt profoundly unfamiliar. Nothing in human history waited so calmly. Unless it understood time differently. He whispered almost to himself. They are not afraid of us. Tarev answered just as softly. That may be the most important detail of all. 31 pulses. The primes growing larger. The silence between sequences feeling deeper. Elian closed his eyes briefly. In darkness he imagined the path of the signal. Crossing empty space. Passing silent stars. Traveling longer than civilizations lasted. All to arrive here. Now. Eyes opening again. Decision forming. We should recommend response. The words felt irreversible the moment they existed. Tarev did not react immediately. Long seconds passing. Then. Recommendation will trigger protocols beyond your control. I know. You may never learn the outcome. I know. Another pause. Heavier. Tarev looked at the screen once more. 37 pulses beginning their slow appearance. When he spoke again. His voice carried something new. Not authority. Not distance. Respect. Then record your recommendation. History rarely offers second chances. Elian turned to the console. Hands steady now. The incident log reopened. White light waiting. He typed slowly. Carefully. Each word deliberate. Structured extraterrestrial transmission escalating through prime sequence. Indicates intentional mathematical greeting. Recommend controlled non-revealing acknowledgement. He stopped. Reading it once. Twice. No dramatic language. Only truth. He saved the entry. A quiet sound. Yet it felt like thunder. Nothing in the room changed immediately. Rain continued fading outside. Machines continued humming. But something invisible had shifted forever. Because a line had been crossed. Not in space, but in choice. Tarev exhaled slowly. Almost silent. It will begin moving now. How long? Unknown. Hours. Days. The uncertainty felt strangely peaceful. Waiting was easier once decision existed. 41 pulses formed on the screen. Higher. Farther. Still climbing. Elian felt no fear now. Only vast quiet wonder. Because somewhere across impossible distance, another intelligence had taken the same risk. To speak into darkness. Without knowing who might answer. Two unknown minds reaching across the universe. Separated by silence. Connected by numbers. The laboratory lights seemed softer suddenly. Storm nearly gone. Night moving gently toward morning. Elian understood this moment would never repeat. The last quiet before the future arrived. He watched the primes continue upward. 43 beginning to appear. And for the first time since the signal arrived, he allowed himself a single fragile hope. That whatever waited out there had come not as conqueror, not as judge, but simply as another voice, looking for someone to hear it. Morning did not arrive suddenly. It moved slowly through the edges of the sky. A faint grey light replacing the deep blue of night. Rain fading into quiet drops sliding from the roof. The city outside beginning to breathe again without knowing why. Inside the laboratory nothing felt like morning. The signal still counted. Still patient. Still certain. 43. Pause. Silence that felt wider than space itself. Elian Varric had not slept. Yet exhaustion no longer mattered. His mind existed in a strange clear stillness. The kind that comes only when life divides into before and after. Tarev Solon remained beside him. No longer distant at the doorway. No longer only an observer. Now simply another human being standing at the same edge of the unknown. Neither man spoke for a long time. Words felt too small. Too slow. Useless against the scale of what was unfolding. The primes continued. 47. Each number rising like a quiet step toward contact. Not rushed. Not demanding. Only waiting. Elian wondered what intelligence required to wait across such distance. What kind of civilization measured time in centuries instead of seconds? What kind of mind believed someone somewhere would eventually answer? A soft tone broke the silence inside the lab. Not from the signal. From the secure communication console behind them. Both men turned at the same moment. The screen glowed with a single notification. No sound beyond the first quiet chime. As if even the machine understood the need for calm. Tarev stepped toward it slowly. Every movement controlled. Yet something in his shoulders revealed tension at last. He read the message without expression. But the stillness that followed carried meaning stronger than any reaction. Elian did not ask immediately. Because some answers change the air the moment they are spoken. Finally Tarev looked back at him. The recommendation has been received. A pause. Authorization for preliminary response is under review. The words settled gently. Yet their weight was enormous. Humanity had moved one step closer to speaking into the universe. Elian felt no triumph. Only a deeper quiet. Because response meant responsibility. And responsibility meant consequences no one could predict. The signal repeated again. 47. Steady as breathing. Time stretched. Minutes passed. Or perhaps only seconds. Impossible to tell. Outside, the first early cars moved along wet streets. Tires whispering on pavement. People beginning ordinary days beneath an extraordinary sky. None of them knew a decision was forming in silence. Another tone from the console. Short. Final. Tarev read again. Longer this time. When he turned back. Something in his face had changed. Not fear. Not relief. Acceptance. Authorization granted. The words felt unreal even as they existed. Elian's heart beat once. Hard. Then settled. How? A controlled mathematical acknowledgement. Non-revealing. Single transmission. Simple. Careful. Historic. The room seemed suddenly smaller. As if the walls themselves understood what was about to happen. Elian moved toward the main console. Hands steady. Mind clearer than ever before. For years he had imagined discovery. But never decision. Now both stood in front of him. He opened the transmission interface. A system designed for calibration signals. Never for conversation between worlds. Yet mathematics needed no redesign. Only intention. The reply had already been chosen by distant committees. By cautious minds. By people who would never stand in this room. A return sequence of primes. 2, 3, 5, 7. Proof of intelligence. Nothing more. Nothing less. Elian read the command once. Then again. So small. So fragile. A whisper across the universe. He hesitated. Not from doubt. But from understanding. Once sent. Humanity would never again be silent in the cosmos. Every story. Every border. Every fear. Every hope. All of it would exist in a universe where someone had answered back. He looked at Tarev. Any final restriction? Only accuracy. A quiet breath. Then. Send when ready. Ready. The word felt impossible. Yet there was no other moment. Elian placed his hand above the confirmation control. Not touching. Just feeling the nearness of history. He thought of childhood rooftops. Cheap telescopes. Wonder without consequence. He thought of crowded cities. Lonely highways. Families eating breakfast unaware of the sky. He thought of the signal traveling across darkness for longer than memory. Waiting. For this single human motion. His hand lowered. Contact. The console accepted the command without drama. No music. No light. Only silent transmission racing outward at the speed of light. Gone instantly. Traveling forever. No way to call it back. No way to know who would truly receive it. The room remained quiet. Machines humming. Morning light growing pale against the windows. For a moment nothing happened. Because space does not answer quickly. Minutes passed. The original signal continued. 47. Pause. Then. Silence. Not the usual pause. Not the measured waiting between primes. A deeper silence. Complete. Elian felt his breath stop. Had it ended? Had they been too late? Had the universe already moved on? Seconds stretched painfully. Then, a new pattern appeared. Not primes. Something different. Longer spacing. Layered pulses. Structure far more complex than before. The reply had changed. Not random. Not error. Response. Realization moved through the room like quiet light. They heard us. Neither man spoke the words. They did not need to. Emotion rose slowly in Elian's chest. Not fear. Not triumph. Connection. The simplest and rarest feeling in existence. Across impossible distance. Two intelligences had touched through mathematics alone. No faces. No language. No understanding of each other's worlds. Yet contact was real. Tears formed in his eyes without warning. Not dramatic. Just human. All the years of listening to empty noise. All the quiet nights believing the sky might never answer. Ended here. Tarev stood beside him in silence. No authority left in the moment. Only witness. The new signal continued unfolding. Patterns within patterns. Meaning still far beyond human decoding. But one truth was already clear. Humanity was no longer alone in silence. Morning sunlight finally crossed the laboratory floor. Soft gold touching metal and glass. An ordinary sunrise on an extraordinary day. Outside, people walked sidewalks, ordered coffee, argued about small things. Life continued exactly the same. And completely different. Elian wiped his eyes gently, almost embarrassed, yet unable to feel anything except quiet awe. What happens now? His voice barely above a whisper. Tarev watched the signal. Light reflecting in tired eyes. Now, we begin to learn. Simple words. Endless meaning. Because contact was not an ending. Only a beginning stretching farther than imagination. Years of study. Decades of decoding. Generations growing up beneath a sky that was finally alive with answer. Elian looked once more at the unfolding pattern. Still mysterious. Still beautiful. He felt something settle inside him. A peace deeper than excitement. The universe had always been vast. Always been silent. Until someone chose to speak. And someone else chose to answer. Two small decisions. Changing everything. The sunlight grew brighter. Filling the laboratory with morning. For the first time in his life, Elian Varick no longer felt like a listener alone in darkness. He was part of a conversation older than Earth. Larger than history. Only just beginning. And somewhere far beyond sight. Across distance without end. Another mind. Equally unknown. Equally curious. Was listening too. The signal continued. Not counting anymore. Not waiting. Speaking. And humanity, at last, was ready to hear.